Hey everybody, it's the Sheriff Tree Fitty and we're back with another GLC review. Today we're looking at Stellar Crown, where we will take a look at all the relevant cards in the set and rank them 1 to 5, 5 being the best. And then at the very end, we will rank the types for GLC on a tier list, in my opinion. So, let's get started. First up is Ledian. Stage 1 has the ability, when you play this Pokemon from your hand, to evolve one of your Pokemon. During your turn, you may switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with 90 HP or less remaining to the active. Gust is always very strong. This is limited to 90 HP or less. But in a stage 1 kind of archetype for grass, I do think that this could see some play. So I'm going to give it a 3, just pretty solid. Then we have Cradily, which is a fossil stage 2. But it has the ability, once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, you get to choose a special condition. Oh wait, not any special, not sleep. You get to choose burn, confuse, or poisoned, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now affected by that special condition. So maybe in a grass poison kind of deck this could see play, but it's a stage 2 and a fossil at that, which is even more inconsistent. So I think there are just better options, so I'm going to give this a 2. And that is it for grass. For fire, we have a new Salazzle that's interesting. Stage 1, for double colorless, your opponent discards a card from their hand. If this Pokemon evolved this turn, you discard 2 more cards. So I think this could actually see play in Fire Mill, possibly. Just a bit of hand disruption. But in a regular fire deck, I don't see you ever replacing this with the Salazzle that draws you cards, because that card is just very, very strong, and fire needs that support. So I will give this a 2 in a regular fire deck, but in a mill specific deck, I think this could be solid, so I'll give it a 3 for that. And that's the only fire card. So on to water, we have Caracosta. Has the ability, your Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active evolution Pokemon. So a bit more damage on a stage 2 fossil, but water doesn't really need help with hitting high numbers. So I don't think this sees enough play, so I'm gonna give it a 2. Then there is Dreadnought, which is an interesting card. Stage 1 has the ability, if an attack from your opponent's Pokemon would deal 200 damage or more to this Pokemon, prevent that damage. So this is pretty interesting. It's it's kind of a way to counter water's pretty rough weakness to lightning, because they're gonna have to play around your weakness, which is pretty interesting, and the only way they'll be able to shut that off is Hex. But yeah, so that's kind of funny. It kind of counters your weakness. And then for 3 colorless, you do 80, and if they already have damage on them, it does 80 more. So 160 for 3 is pretty solid. Um, so I think this is actually pretty good. Maybe in a hydro pump deck, or uh, honestly, I could see this played in any water deck. It just kind of helps you against your weakness matchup, which is funny. So I'm going to give Dreadnought a 3. Interesting card. Okay, then there is Lightning, and we have Joltik. Okay, so for 1 colorless, search your deck for up to 2 basic grass and up to 2 basic lightning and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like. So turn 1, going second, you can accelerate 4 energy into play with a single energy. This card is crazy. Even with Raikou being banned, I think this card is absolutely ridiculous. You can just play 2 grass energy in your deck, and just have that be your colorless cost for your Pokemon, and you're essentially just building up 2 attackers right off the bat. So I think Joltik is absolutely insane, and there might even be some decent Galvantulas you could play with it, but I think just playing this by itself is good enough. So I'm going to give Joltik a 5. I think the energy acceleration is just absurd. So next is Togedemaru, which is an interesting card, where for 1 lightning energy it does 30 damage. If your opponent has exactly 1 prize card remaining, the active Pokemon is now paralyzed. I think this is pretty good if you need to stall, and I don't support this kind of play, but I think this is really good in a Shock Lock deck. You could totally play this too, where you kind of just delay your opponent from doing anything, and by the time they have 1 prize remaining, they probably have ran out of their switch cards. So solid for stalling if you really need to, and hopefully by the time you use this a couple times, you've reacted and set back up to where you can come back. But I don't know, it's an interesting card. I think it's a low 3, maybe a 2. But I definitely think that lightning decks could fit this in there. So okay, Alcremie, stage 1 psychic Pokemon. For 1 colorless, you search your deck for up to 5 Pokemon with the same type as any basic energy attached to this Pokemon, which is going to be psychic, obviously. Reveal them and put them into your hand. So, very, very good setup Pokemon. It's just on a stage 1, which kind of sucks. So, you're using this on your 2nd turn, and by that time, it might be just a little too slow for setting up, but you can, if you already, like, imagine already setting up, like, your Natu and your Inkay and your Ralts, and you just go search for all 3 of those evolutions, and then, like, 2 attackers to set up. Like, that seems pretty good. If you do this very early on and your opponent doesn't have time to react to it. If they do have time, then that sucks. But yeah, interesting card. I'm going to give it a 2. I think it might be just a little too situational, but searching for 5 is not something to scoff at. So Okay, then Iron Boulder. Okay, shout out to one of my students. He freaking loves this card. um, but basic future Pokemon, mind you. For 2 energy, it does 170, but you have to have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent. Otherwise, this does nothing. So pretty heavy drawback, especially with the ban of Marshadow. This will be even more difficult to pull off. But 170 for 2 is quite strong, especially with the energy acceleration of Psychic. You can definitely pull this off. So I guess you could like play Judge or something if you wanted. So yeah, I'm gonna give Iron Boulder a 2. It is situational. Having to have the same amount of cards as your opponent is annoying, but 170 for 2 is very good. Okay. We now have... Where is he? There he is. Phalanx. For 1 colorless, you search for deck for 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. Okay. Solid setup. But then for 2 colorless, you do 30 damage, and if it used Link Formation during your last turn, then this does 90 more damage, which is very good. So I think starting this guy is very, very strong, because you just use this first turn, going second, and you set up your board, and then you're doing 120 for 2 damage the next turn. Like, that is pretty good. That's a very quick KO, and you're setting up your board. So I think this guy is actually pretty solid for fighting, so I'm going to give him a 3. Swalot is a stage 1 dark Pokemon. For 1 dark, does 10 damage. If this Pokemon has more energy attached to it than your opponent's active Pokemon, this does 160 more. So if you've got a lot of like gust cards, like you can do 170 for 1 energy, and you just like gust up their support. Like you just 1-hit KO a Dragonite or something, you know? So that is quite strong, and Dark does love its cheap attackers, because all of your heavy energy cost is going towards Guzzlord. So I think this guy is very interesting and quite good. You do have to have more energy than your opponent. Usually, at most, your opponent is going to have like what 2-3 energy attached to them. So you do have to, you know, kind of meet that, but I still think this guy is pretty strong and interesting. So I'm going to give Swalot a 3 as well. We have a couple steel Pokemon. The first being Klinklang, which is a stage 2 and has the ability, once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in your hand and your opponent has a stage 2 Pokemon in play, you may put this Pokemon onto your bench. So let's take a look at all the types. So your opponent is definitely going to have a stage 2, probably playing grass unless it's the stage 1 variant. They are going to have a stage 2 in Dragon. Dark, you're probably not. In Water, they most likely will with Inteleon or Baxcalibur. Fire, you've got Charizard. Psychic, you have Gallade, of course, and Tinkaton if you're playing that variant. So a lot of decks are playing stage 2s, at least one. So I think this guy is actually pretty solid. And then for 2 colorless, um, 130, and then you discard all energy from this Pokemon. So 130 for 2 is pretty decent. I think this guy is a pretty good attacker, decently cheap. So I'm actually gonna give him a 4. I think this guy is pretty good, kind of to the same effect of Luxray. Very conditional, but is a solid attacker. So, and decently cheap, which metal sometimes needs. So we now have our first Archaludon, which is a stage 1 and has the ability your Pokemon with any metal energy attached have no retreat cost, which is very nice, very good. Giving everything free retreat is great, especially if they have an attack that says like they can't attack next turn or something like that, and they stick around. But then its attack is also pretty decent as well, which is an attack like I was just talking about. For 3 metal, which you can accelerate with Matang and whatnot, you do 160, which is a great number to hit for 3. That is getting rid of like most, if not all, support Pokemon and most attackers. And then this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn, but you get to just free retreat it if you're attacking with it. But even as just a support Pokemon, this guy is pretty good, and 180 at that, so it's probably not getting KO'd, which is nice. So I'm going to give Archaludon a 4. We have the only dragon Pokemon out of this set, which is disappointing, but it is a basic ancient Pokemon for lightning and fighting. It does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each energy attached to this Pokemon. So it is Snipe for Dragon, which is pretty nice. For 3 energy, 130 is bad, but sniping something for 2, so you essentially can snipe something for 60 for 2 energy, which I guess could be applicable sometimes. I think this is decent. I don't know if it's always played. But yeah, it is decent, so I'm going to give Raging Bolt a 3, being able to pick stuff off. Okay. Now we have Fan Rotom. Okay. This guy. Alright. So, has an ability on a basic. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less. And you reveal them and put them into your hand. This is so strong. Like, so colorless did not need this setup help, but here it is. So you essentially just search for this guy, and then you can get instantly your Bidoof, your Squovit, and something else like a Minccino or like a Doduo or something like that, or some other Pokemon you might be playing with evolutions. And this is on an ability, and you get to use it every turn. Like this card is freaking nuts. And then Assault Landing, 70 damage for 1 colorless, and there has to be a stadium in play, but 70 for 1 is quite good. That's donking a bunch of basics. Hitting 90 as well is hitting a bunch of stage 1s for a 1-hit KO as well, and you can hit 90 with powerful colorless energy or like a muscle band or something. So this guy is ridiculous. I have him as a 4. I want to give him a 5. I think I give him a 5 because, yeah, this guy is crazy. Colorless did not need this help, but here it is. And that is it for Pokemon. Now we go to trainers. So there are a couple new fossils that you need to use with the new fossil Pokemon, so they're here. I'm not going to rank them just because, yeah, they're fossils. Doesn't apply to GLC, doesn't apply to GLC. Okay, here he is, here's the lad. Alright, so we have Crispin, which is a new supporter. You search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards of different types, reveal them, and put one of them into your hand. Attach the other energy to one of your Pokemon. This card is absolutely ridiculous. This boosts the consistency of Dragon like so much, and it accelerates the energy like so. This card was made for Dragon. But this card is also very strong in other types as well. There are grass decks where you could, you want to play a couple fire and grass in there for the pepper Pokemon that I forgot its name, or grass and lightning for the grass Galvantula that has recently come out, or you also play this in your lightning deck with your Joltik because you have lightning and grass in that deck as well. So very good. And then there's, of course, you could play this in like colorless if you play fire and something else, because everyone is running fire typically. And metal as well, they play a couple fire usually. So like there are a ton of different decks that play multiple energies, and this acceleration and consistency to get multiple energies is just absolutely insane. So I'm gonna give Crispin a 5. This card is absolutely phenomenal in certain decks such as Dragon. Like, I'm boosting the consistency of Dragon is always a plus for me. I'm way biased, but I'm all for it. So Crispin is a 5. Alright, doesn't apply. We have a Gravity Gemstone, which is a tool, and if the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot, the retreat cost of both Pokemon are 1 more. And this is both active Pokemon. So on this could be good on a Pokemon who attacks based on your opponent's retreat cost. It's also decent for kind of negating things such as like U-turn board, where they suddenly need another energy to retreat. So it could be decent, but there are usually other tools you're wanting to play besides this. But I do see a place in a couple things, but I'm gonna give it a 2. I think it's a little too situational, but it isn't the worst thing to play. Kofu is the worst thing to play. Just kidding. But it's not that good. Let's read it. New supporter, put 2 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck in any order, then draw 4 cards. You are required to put 2 cards at the bottom of your deck. Otherwise, you can't play this card. So you get rid of 2 cards and you draw 4. I don't know. I think this is a little weak for draw. I guess in some cases it's stronger than Marnie. In some cases better than Iono, but you're also disrupting your opponent, so I think you still have to play those. I'm gonna give Kofu a 2. It's honestly not the worst draw, but I think it is situational, and I think there are just better options. Like, I still think I play Marnie or Iono over this, you know, so. Because you do need that disruption for your opponent. Okay, now we have Lacey. Supporters shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 4 cards. If your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, draw until you have 8 cards. And that is pretty good. So shuffle, draw 4 is not very good. So playing this late game is when you want to play this, but also, I mean, I've seen people, you know, play Colress with 2 bench Pokemon and they came out okay. So, I mean, this isn't the worst thing in the world. So, and then late game, fresh new hand of 8 is quite strong, and you get to shuffle. So, very good. I think I still play Colress over this card, unless you're worried about Kyurem or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think Lacey is pretty solid. I'm going to give Lacey a 3. And now we have these berries that do the same thing for different types. So whenever this card is attached to his damage from your opponent's fire Pokemon, this Pokemon takes 60 less. And then the next one is attacks from your opponent's psychic Pokemon, you take 60 less. So these are very niche. If you're expecting to play a ton of fire decks or a ton of psychic, which that one is a little bit better than the other one because psychic is quite strong and popular, then I maybe see this. And it stays on your Pokemon. You can just attach it and just wait to tank the hit. So, I mean, that is kind of nice. But I think these are a little niche and situational. They're a complete dead card if you're not playing that type. So, I'm going to give these a 2. And that's it for Stellar Crown. There's not much for this set for GLC. It is a very standard focused set, it seems. So let's go over to our ranking. Now, nothing really has changed because this set was not very impactful. But what did happen between this set and the previous set is a few cards got banned, and that includes Raikou. So Amazing Rare Raikou was banned, which was a main reason I had Lightning up here in S. That being banned, I don't think Lightning is S anymore. I still think it is very strong. I still think Lightning is the best spread deck. But I think overall it should be down here. Psychic did see a couple bans. Marshadow was banned, but I still think Psychic is very, very good. Its kit and support is just still phenomenal, so I still think it's going to be an S. I still have Colorless as the best deck in the format, specifically Turbo Lax. Like, the whole deck is gas and is very hard to beat, especially when Snorlax is just back-to-back Snorlaxes. Like, oh, that's so hard to deal with. And then Dark is up here primarily because of Guzzlord. If Guzzlord eventually gets banned, which, I mean, people want it banned, Dark is going to go down significantly. But for now, I do think Dark is just one of the most aggressive decks. Kind of like Lightning, but it also, in addition, has Guzzlord. So, yeah. And then Dragon, I feel like just got boosted greatly with Crispin. I think it's quite strong here in A. Adding that consistency is awesome. But then, and Lightning did get Joltik, which is great, but I still think it's here in A. And then not really anything else has changed. These guys got a couple new Pokemon to play with, but I think their power level stays the same. So yeah, not much changes. So that is gonna do it for the Stellar Crown GLC review. If I did not go over a card that you wanted me to, please leave a comment and I will point it out there. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye.